Hi, it's Tony Robbins. Welcome to another edition of the New Money Masters. This session is going to be a very special one. I have an opportunity to introduce you to a dear friend of mine and a partner, and a gentleman who's helped businesses from all over the world. More than 75 of the Fortune 500 have sought him out. He wrote the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. His name is Chet Holmes. He's a gentleman who took 9 of Charlie Munger's divisions and turned them, literally doubled their sales in the first year, something Charlie had never seen. And Charlie's a multi-billionaire and one of the most successful businessmen in the world. So Chet has got quite a track record of making businesses go to a whole nother level. And what I love about Chet is he makes it so simple. We're going to show you some principles in this interview that once you understand them, you can apply them whether you're a web marketer or you own a car dealership or you've got a candy shop, someplace in Korea. It doesn't matter where you are. And we have people from all over the world who we reached out and said, look, we're going to do a different session this time. We're going to do a session where we're going to teach you some principles. I'm going to do my interview with our guest. But we want to really troubleshoot your business a little bit. So tell us what your challenges are, and let's let him see if he can give you some answers to that. So it's amazing. We got responses literally from all over the world through the web, and we're going to address those in this session. So it'll be a kind of a little workshop at the end of what's the problem, what's the solution? How can we use some of the principles that we talked about here? So I want to begin by just welcoming my dear friend Chet. Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming down and visiting.
My pleasure.
I'm excited to introduce people to you here. I mean, you don't need an introduction for most people in business, but I'm curious. You started with very humble roots, and now you're the guy that's called upon to do these turnarounds for giant corporations. Some of our clients, one of our recent clients, we turned around as $1.5 billion company, and yet we're also able to turn around, dental offices. I mean, we really have the chance now to make a difference in every type of business, every type of size. Because the principles you teach are so solid and so simple, and they work, and they give a competitive advantage. So how did you come up with this concept of how to create a competitive advantage that was different than everybody else, of selling the same way, marketing the same way? Where did the drive for that come from? And tell us just a little bit about your background, how this evolved.
Well, we were poor, and when we were growing up, we were poor. My father was first he was a Marine combat instructor, and then he came out of that and became a police officer, and 5 children. And my mother didn't work, so we were poor, and I didn't like being poor. So I was definitely driven to try and climb above that. And then later in life, I got into sales, and I didn't like being treated like a salesperson. So I found that if I was able to bring value beyond just the product that I was selling, I could get more appointments, I could get appointments with higher level executives. And then when I went to work for Charlie, we institutionalized it. I turned it into a system, and because he didn't give me 9 companies at once, he gave me 1, and then I doubled the sales in it, and then they gave me 2 more, and then I doubled the sales of those, and they gave me 3 more, and so that's how I ended up running 9 different divisions. And then the first one, I doubled 3 years in a row, using the techniques that we're going to talk to today. So the primary tool that I use to help people trying to attract the widest possible audience is what we call education-based marketing. And you and I have a client right now. They're the largest home builder in the world, or certainly in Mexico, they're the largest. They might be the 3rd largest in the world, and maybe probably be the largest in the world before they're done. But these guys build 700 homes a week.
That's amazing.
And they're New York Times Stock Exchange, trade on the New York Stock Exchange. And basically, they're out there all the time going, buy a home X home, buy a home X home, buy a home X home in Mexico, right? And so we went in there, and again, trying to always understand the market, do research on it. Most people never do this. They don't really understand their markets. Like, I talked to a group the other day, and they were selling to lawyers, and I said, how many lawyers are there in the country? Nobody knew. They know their product, they know their service, they don't know anything about the industries or the markets that they serve. So we did this research, and we went out there, and we found out the biggest problem in Mexico is that people will live 3 generations in one household. I mean, literally, you will have 15 people living in a 700 square foot house. There's a living room, a bedroom, and a bathroom. I mean, in a kitchen. That's it. Very, very tiny houses, and they're shacks. And yet the Mexican government now is funding all the homes you want to possibly buy. So you can go out of that shack into a brand new home, and they're taking the money out of your paycheck anyway. So just like they do Social Security in the United States, in Mexico, that Social Security can be applied as a down payment on a house, and then the percentage that they take, they'll just take it out of your pay, and they'll pay the mortgage for you.
Wow.
So, it's like, why wouldn't you get a house? And just motivating people to get out of that whole thing. So we did some research, and we found out that in a crowded household, the chance of infancy death is 400% greater than in a non-crowded household. If a little girl grows up in a crowded household, because she's the lowest on the pecking order, she sort of grows up with learned helplessness.
Yeah.
Boys who grow up in a crowded household are twice as likely to be a failure in life, twice as likely to be an alcoholic. Females who grow up in crowded households are twice as likely to get pregnant younger. So this is data. So we took some of this data, and where their ads used to say, "Buy Homex home. We're Homex. We build homes. Buy a Homex home," and their agency at the time just said to us basically, "Look, the advertising is not really, going to pull response. I mean, people are going to buy a house whether they want to or not. You can't really motivate people to buy a house. We're just, fundamentally just branding." And
right.
I don't buy that for a second, by the way. I do not believe that if you're advertising, you should be pulling response. Yeah. And it's a waste of money otherwise. Like, while I'm branding, let me pull some response.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So we started running the ads, and we started saying, did you know the chance of infancy death in a crowded household is 400% greater? Did you know that blah, 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 blah? And then, we set up the whole stage, and the first week that the ads ran, the month prior, they pulled 7 phone calls.
This is $1.5 billion company, by the way, so people know.
Yeah, and the first week they ran the ad, they pulled what we thought at first was 1,300 inbound phone calls.
Right.
Later on, we found out it was 2,300 because 800 went into nothing because we filled up their voicemail. Nobody could answer any more calls, right. So they were able to track 800 lost calls. Wow. And that alone, for a company doing 700 homes a week, in some weeks has boosted their sales 300 additional homes.
Wow.
So
it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And this is the value of education marketing. It's knowing what your audience really needs to know in order to get them to understand what they need to do, fulfilling the need after you've established what the real problem is. And I've watched you do this again and again in just any kind of industry you can imagine. What about our clients just recently you did this with was the lady who had that new contraption, I got in all my houses now, that takes care of mice or rats. So give an example of that, if you will.
That's a great example. Again, the whole idea here is to try and appeal to a wider audience or to motivate an audience that didn't exist before to actually take some action.
Yes.
So most of us, if we have a mouse problem, then we go and we get, a mouse trap, which kills the mouse.
Yeah.
Or we get rat poison or mouse poison, something like that, which again kills the mouse. You never know where they're going to die. They could die in your walls or whatever. And there was this woman, she's a little small company. I won't give her numbers because she's a privately held company, but a small company. And her husband had a farm, and so they didn't want to use traps because the farm animals would get the traps on them. They didn't want to use rat poison because it would poison the farm animals. So she had been an herbist in college, and she found out that there's a mixture of herbs and fragrances that just is highly offensive to a mouse. So if there were mice all around us and we just dropped these little mouse pouches all around the floor here, you'd see the mouse just scurry as if like you and I would be with a skunk.
Right.
Oh!
Yeah.
But meanwhile, to you and I, it smells like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like pine scent or something. It smells really good. So I said, well, what kinds of problems do mice cause? Well, I don't know. Well, actually, they set about 800 fires a year. Now, I don't have the exact data, but it's an unbelievable number like that.
Yeah.
They cause $8 billion worth of damage a year.
Yeah.
And the reason that they do this is because mice look at wire as food, because wire is made out of petroleum, and petroleum is food to a mouse. So if they're hungry, they're going to eat the wires, and so you go to start up your tractor and tractor explodes.
Right.
So they actually the numbers are unbelievable. So we started showing all this data, and they carry diseases. 2 mice will have 26 offspring in 1 year. 2 mice, And so anyway, so we put all this into what we call now a core story. It's kind of like if you had the chance to get in front of your whole audience all at once, what would your full core story be?
Yes.
And we force companies to think through what that would be because most of them aren't ready. They have no idea. They don't know what they would say. And in fact, the best way to depict that is to say, what if I could put you in front of a giant audience of all your potential buyers right now? First of all, are you ready? Are you guys ready? The answer is no. I just did a big event with you, and 3 people in the audience raised their hand.
Right.
And
all clients of ours.
All clients, exactly. The only ones in the audience who were ready,
right.
Because we force them to be ready.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, just write the title for that. If you're home here, just write, like, what would be the title? You walk out there, you've got 50,000 potential buyers right now. What would you say? What would be your title? Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to talk about. And so when we force people to do that exercise, almost all the titles are focused on themselves.
Yes.
Why my, rat poison is good or better than anybody else's, or why my Holmes homes are better than anybody else's. So what we force them to do is say something like, how would you like to reduce the chance of death in your family, make your children have higher levels of self-esteem, make sure they're more successful in life? So those are all like setting up a buying criteria before I even try to sell you. But now if I'm an audience, I'm way more interested in that than I am in you telling me about your Holmes homes.
Right.
So it's kind of
so let's do an example. An example of this, you talk about this as kind of the stadium pitch.
Right.
And so whether I'm at home and I'm internet marketer and I want to grab people's attention, what most people do is they write headlines or they do their presentation or they make their video, and it appeals to a very, very small percentage of the audience. And this is what I really learned from you that was so valuable is there is a predictable audience that's open to what you have. So anybody can sell anything. You can put out any web video, or you can put up a website, and if you get any traffic at all, a certain percentage of the people are in the market to buy what you have, and you might be there at the right time. But maybe let's actually walk people through that stadium pitch so that if you're at home and you're thinking about your business and you're thinking about, okay, how do I have a competitive advantage? The answer is it doesn't matter if you use Facebook, Twitter, direct marketing, direct mail, email, a salesperson,
radio, advertising,
you still
television.
have to have a structure of what you put out in a world where everybody's trying to grab people's attention. You need something to grab their attention right now that's going to make them listen. And if you make your offering so tight, so small, you're only going to have a small number of people respond to you. Everything is about not only how to capture the audience and get them to come to where you are, but get them to stay there and do business with you. And this is what I think one of your greatest skills. You've done it for 3 decades. So walk us through that stadium pitch. What you're basically saying is, if I was going to put my video out there, if I was going to stand up personally in front of an audience of 50,000 people, if I was going to have an ad do it, a radio ad, and it was going to hold up and people are all going to continue to listen and not get up and leave the stadium, what percentage of those people are going to be listening no matter what?
Okay. So at any given time, you have about 3% of the population that drives all of commerce. So again, I prove this all the time. I'll be in an audience and I'll say, how many people in the market right now for a car? 3% will raise their hand, about 3%. And then I'll say, how about
real estate or
furniture? Right,
furniture,
different
anything.
3%. Or how about tires for your car? Different 3%.
Yeah.
So at any given time, that's driving all of commerce. But what if you could get them? So I had a client that sold exercise equipment, perfect example. And all their ads were like 40% off. I mean, what else can they say? We have exercise equipment. We have it 40% off. Special sale. So everything they did was to try and get that guy who's buying now. So if you look at the pyramid, you have 3% buying now. You have another, at any given time, for any given product, you have another 6 or 7% who are what we call open to it. Kind of like, yeah, I'm open to that. I'm thinking about getting an elliptical machine right now. I'm kind of open to that. I'm not out there actively buying.
Or my lease is coming up on my car.
Right.
It's not over yet.
Right.
But, I'm going to look at it soon.
Yeah, but I don't know what car I want, but I'm sure in the open to it category.
Sure.
But during that time, that's twice the number of those buying now. Because we go from 3% to 6%. But the vast majority are in one of 3 categories. We call it either I'm really not thinking about it, and they got 30% of those. Or you have the soft no, it's kind of, I don't think I'm interested in that.
Right.
And then you have the bottom, I'm not interested.
Right.
I hate Toyotas, or whatever,
Right.
that guy. But if you could get that guy even to listen to it, so if we mention an elliptical machine and I have it at 40% off, nobody's interested in that. But if I go on the radio, just as an example of what we did for this client, and I say, did you know that death by all disease can be cut in half by just one thing that you can do every day? Did you know that 8 out of 10 Americans can cut their death by all disease in half, and then sort of like along those lines, those kind of statistics. And when we started using those kinds of statistics in the radio spots, now we're appealing to the whole pyramid. You understand?
That's right. Everybody's listening.
Like up here, if I'm selling an elliptical machine at 40% off, I'm just getting the guy who wants an elliptical machine. But if I start giving you statistics about death by all disease, cancer, heart disease, like there's almost no disease, by the way, that exercise doesn't impact in some very, very positive way.
And you have a great statistic too, which is, it comes from the Journal of American Medical Association, right? That says what? If you want to cut your chances of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes by 50%, all you got to do is what?
Exercise, walk 2 miles a day.
Walk 2 miles a day. So, I mean, that was the beauty. You guys put that in the ad, and then people who weren't even interested, and then you say you can walk and do that process, or you can do it on your own little elliptic machine, and sales went crazy for this group.
Well, even better, though, we didn't say walk 2 miles a day. We're not going to
you
give
didn't
that
tell them
away.
what it was.
They got to call and find out.
Oh, interesting.
So that really just set the world on fire. And again, it's another example of where if I'm advertising an elliptical machine 40% off and I'm getting, 3 leads. Well, when we went to this, they really went to getting 30 leads, 35 leads, 70 leads. So again, for you folks listening at home, what can you say that even the guy at the bottom of that pyramid would go, what's that? I mean, you're not going to make him buy, but what would he want to learn more about? And that's the whole hook of education-based marketing.
Right. That makes so much sense. Give me an example of B2B where you're selling business to business also. I know you talked to me about the example of the roofing company. It's still your client to this day.
Okay. Charlie Munger's a good example too. We can go there. But with the roofing company, again, tactically, they'd call up and they say, hi, we're XYZ Roofing Company. We'd love to come and talk to you about your roof. Well, if you're not in the buying now category, what are you going to say to that? You're going to say no. And the other thing is, in their case, they sell for commercial roofs, for like this hotel, for example, or for a huge restaurant or a Walmart. These are massive roof systems. A roof on a Walmart mark costs $50 million, And so with a roof like that, you're going to take professional care of it. And these guys would call up, and the person they would normally get to speak to in most organizations was a facilities manager.
Yes.
And the facilities manager is told by his boss, which might be the CFO or the CEO, get this as cheap as possible. And so his focus is on how to save money, not necessarily how to get the best quality. And even if he found somebody that was a little more expensive, better quality, it'd be hard for him to go to his boss and say, this is better, but I think it's better. But there's no way these roofing salespeople are going to get to see the boss calling up and saying, I want to come and talk to you about your roof, because the boss is like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
So we created something called the 5 most dangerous trends facing building owners. And now if I call you up and you own a building here, where you have your offices, and I say to you, look, we've done some research and we found out there's 5 dangerous trends that are literally threatening the very fabric and fiber of your building ownership. And we put that into an education. You go, well, you're a roofing company, right? This is kind of like the objection part starts coming. And you go, well, we are, but did you know that 90% of all the problems you're going to have on your roof actually have in your building start on your roof? No, I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, that's just part of it. I mean, actually, one of the other things we found is that there's heavy litigation now around building ownership. Were you aware of that? Well, yeah, I'm kind of aware of that. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you'd like to avoid some of that litigation, we'll teach you how. So if you're going to try and go after the bigger boss, you're going to have to have an education that boss is interested in. So we created all this. And again, they ended up, and the other thing that it did is it changed what kind of person could make the sales call.
Yes.
Because they used to have a guy who had to be a roofing expert, because his whole goal was get with the facilities manager, get him up on the roof, and start showing them all the mistakes that the last roofers had made.
Right.
This thing, you could get with the owner. It was packed with information. There was a shift at some point where we went to talking about the roof, because we showed them 90% of all problems in a building start on the roof. Makes sense, right? Yeah. And but by the time it was done, that guy did not care when he saw about the litigation, about all the damage, and about how water on the roof is. And again, it's a roofing company, and they weren't teaching any of this stuff, because all they would, they tactically they want to sell this roofing service. So we did some research, and we found out that water, when it gets into the roof and then goes down into the building, it turns insulation into a conductor of energy instead of an insulator.
Wow.
So for example, if it's cold in the winter, it's now going to put a block of ice around your building. Your heat's going to run 50% more. If it's in the summertime, it turns that insulation into a conductor of heat. And in fact, they've got pictures where they show 2 hours after the sun goes down, that roof is still hot because this insulation is wet and it's like a conductor of energy. So anyway, now going in and teaching all of that kind of thing, it just really changed everything because they could have salespeople who were sophisticated executives and good at selling and didn't have to know anything about the roof. Because if I sell you about why you need much better servicing in your roof, you make that sale intellectually. I don't need to take you up on the roof.
Right.
And then of course the close just became an analysis of what was wrong with the roof, and and then you as the owner, you don't care that it costs more. So it just did all these things. Got them better appointments. It got them appointments with a higher level executive. They then invited the facilities manager, so he was also in the meeting. It got them more money for the same services because after the owner saw like the failure rate of most companies and how much litigation and how their warranties don't mean crap anyway, and after he sees all this, he just goes, you know what? I don't care that you guys are $1 more an hour. Who cares?
Right. Because I'm saving so much more in those areas. So again, it's educating them so that they desire and need your services.
Right.
And that you've been great at doing that research, but you also show people how to do it, and you also have companies that you recommend that actually do that kind of research. So if you're at home going, well, how would I get all that information? It's available on the web. You can do it on your own, or you can go work with a company that does that type of work. Let's talk about, let's say I have a little restaurant. Was one of the type of people that wrote into us, and I'm in my restaurant, and right now the economy's tightened. People are spending more time at home. They're eating less at the restaurants. I've got great food. I got a great restaurant. I got great service, but I can't keep the restaurant full. I'm advertising. I'm spending more dollars on advertising than before. People are just not coming in, and there are people right now like that are closing up. Take that case, what would you do with this? I know one of your strategies that you teach.
Okay, so we teach a concept, it's called the best buyer strategy. And so you probably eat out, 5 nights a week. Sometimes it's 7 nights a week for me because I'm traveling all the time.
Sure.
So actually that's a good story because I can give you a case in point. There's this little gourmet restaurant in a motel in our neighborhood. And so I never even noticed it. It's like Ricky's Bar and Restaurant, it says, in a red neon thing. And it's in a motel. So it's not like I'm stopping in there, But some neighbor of ours takes us there one night, and that's like, oh my God, the food is fantastic. It's really great. So, but the place is, so we start going there regularly, and I have food allergies. And so I will tend to focus in my neighborhood on like 3 or 4 restaurants, and then I'll train them so that if I take you out for dinner, I'm going to take you to a place where I don't have to explain that I'm allergic to this and that. And the waiter already knows. Right. And then I tip them heavily, So anyway, I start going there a lot, and the wait staff is great. The food is fantastic. I know the menu. I don't even have to look at the thing. And one Tuesday night we're in there, we're the only people in there. The restaurant is empty. Ghost town. And he's got waiters and a bartender and, a hostess and himself and kitchen chefs and cooks in the back and busboys. I mean, this is a whole place. 2 people in the restaurant. So he's losing money that night.
Right.
So I, nudge him over, and he comes over to me and I go, how'd you like to sell at this restaurant? And it was like literally every table in the place full. And he goes, like, that's impossible. Like he doesn't say that, but you see it on his face. Right. And I go, I only have one condition. He says, what's that? I said, I'll show you how to sell at this restaurant, but my condition is I always get a table. Because I don't want to sell this, it's now become one of my favorite restaurants, So
at this point, he's thinking you're crazy, like he's looking at an empty restaurant saying, no problem, right?
Yeah, sure, okay, fine. So this is what we call best buyer strategy. Who's your best buyer? And for those people, you want to do something special because they're a best buyer. So I had to talk him into this. I said, look, I've been coming here. Last week we came here 7 days in a row, just as it worked out. And 3 or 4 of those days, I brought other people. And my bill was $200 and $500 and $700. I said, what do you think I've spent in this restaurant in the last 6 months since I've been coming in here? She goes, I don't know. I said, maybe $10,000. I said, how many of your diners that are coming in here spent $10,000? He goes, not a lot. And I go, well, wouldn't you like to have just those kind of buyers in here? He goes, yeah, well, how do I get them? And I said, well, we use a thing called the best neighborhood strategy. And people live in better, in the big houses in the best neighborhoods. They're probably out spending more money because money's a lesser issue than convenience. That's what it is for me. I eat out because it's convenient. You know what I mean? I don't have the time to cook and prepare and this and that. So I said, would you buy a dinner for people just to prove to them how good your restaurant is? Mm-hmm. He goes, and especially if they're going to be like me, where they're going to eat out a lot and spend a lot of money and, buy the most expensive things on the menu, whatever the heck they want, bring friends in, entertain. He goes, heck yes, I'd buy them a dinner in a second. So little direct mail tip, by the way, you know the number one open thing in direct mail, let's say you come home, you got all your bills, and there's a greeting card.
Right.
What are you going to open first?
Right.
You're going to go right to the greeting card.
Right.
So I said, send a greeting card. So we had this really nice invitation put together, and it said, you're invited on the front of the thing, and it looked like a wedding invitation. It was beautiful, white, it's nice, expensive. And you open it up, and it says, because of who you are, and because we think you're the kind of discerning client that we'd like to attract, we are willing to buy you dinner in our restaurant just to prove how fantastic it is. Right. We have a 5-star gourmet restaurant. We're 5 minutes from your house, which we know because we can target the neighborhood we want, and we would like to buy you dinner. Now, when you come in, use this exact invitation because you're special and we want to treat you special. So now the guy comes in with the thing, and they know he lives in a mansion down the street, so they're going to treat him extra special. So he does the mailer, and the first place he does it, I said, do my neighborhood, because 54 houses around a golf course. I said, do it to my neighborhood, So I get it at home, and I'm like, uh-huh. So I stop in, I go, so how did it work? He goes, nah, it didn't really work. And I go, really? And I go, nobody responded? He said, well, no, 6 people have come in so far. And I go, when was the last time you heard a direct mail piece pulling a 12% response rate? Send more invitations, So anyway, then I guess it's about 4 or 5 months later. It's a Tuesday night, and he keeps sending these, and he starts to get the hang of it, and he's working the people over, and he's doing strategic selling where, first time at the restaurant, oh, let me tell you about this, a gourmet, 5-star, organic food, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And so when he's all finished, I come back about 6 months later one day, and I come in, it's a Tuesday night, totally sold out.
Right.
No tables.
Right.
So I go like this at the guy, I go,
where's my table?
Where's my table?
He's ready to move one to get you in there at this
Well,
stage.
they took one out of the kitchen, and they put a nice white tablecloth on it, put it over in the corner, and my wife